House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.
Welcome to House to Home, everybody. Liz, Gina, and myself, Jason. We love feedback. We love a response loop and everything. And that is the purpose of our episode for this week, because I ran into, ladies, a very, very nice gentleman and his family this weekend at Shirley's over in Tamuning. He's from Jonestown, so he's like right up the street, right? And he was saying, Jason, can you please ask Liz and Gina, because I live in Jonestown, I'm happy there, but I would really, really love to separate and rezone like my house so that my children can live in their own part of the house and they can have their own, for all intents and purposes, their own utility structure, power and water and everything like that. And he was kind of implying to me that to do so right now, obviously, if you move from R1 to R2, it is technically possible, but apparently it's very, very difficult and probably costly. So what thoughts do you have on that?
So Jason, normally when you're rezoning, there is a process. So if you're in an R1 zone and you wanted to rezone it to an R2, which is a multifamily, there is a process involved where you'd have to go to the Territorial Land Commission and request for a rezoning. So there is a process. But again, it just depends, which will cover the other intent. So if the intent is to build an apartment building, and of course, they'll look at the lot size. They send out notices to the neighbors to find out and they put up a big sign that we're rezoning this property. If land management or the Territorial Land Use Commission approves that you move forward, there's different notices that are involved to rezone the property. But if the neighbors start to complain at a public hearing, then you will have issues. So again, the size of the lot is important. And if your neighbors are R2, it's still possible you can rezone it. But I think what he's probably talking about is the ability to have a little casita at the back or extend the house to allow for his son to live in it and then separate utilities. So that sort of thing is actually all over Dededo, if you really want to look, and other areas of our island where families extend the back and rent it out to family members or rent it out to someone that's looking for a 1 or a 2 bedroom. So that is it's happening around our island right now, right, Gina?
It's happening all over our island. Most of it, I would say 90% of it is happening illegally. But I think the reason that this gentleman is having a difficult time with it is because, it's a structure thing. When you go in to ask for these rezonings, number one, there is already it's called fast track rezone, and there's guidance for that, but it wouldn't apply for the Jonestown area because Jonestown is under PUD. So what Liz and we've been advocating that the legislature, I think we've come to a point, actually we reached this point a while ago, but we've come to a point in our community where the legislature and the utilities companies and maybe even GLUC, they need to get together and update our laws, mostly the legislature, because our laws right now will not allow this gentleman from Jonestown to be able to convert from, he's not actually in R1, he's in a PUD. Jonestown was part of a PUD and it has covenants. So there are restrictions right now in the laws that prevent somebody like that from being able to build maybe a 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom extension to his home so that he could take care of his family. He's talking about taking care of his kids. Or Liz is mentioning, well, what if you're just doing it because you need supplemental income? The legislature has to really take a look at our laws. And the reason we're encouraging this is because we do have a housing shortage here, especially for unsubsidized families, working class families who don't get military allowances or even the low income Section 8 allowances.
So what you're addressing, if I made you, so for example, like you can say a property was passed down, a fairly sizable property, say like 5 bedroom, 3 bath and everything, and you wind up taking that and turning it from a 1 family household into a 5 unit apartment building.
You can't do that by law.
So there is an economic benefit where if this were to be legit. For the
well, it's an economic benefit if you are able to pull it off based on making it legal and you need to go through the government. And in some areas, Liz was pointing out, you cannot just go from a residential use to a multifamily use. Number one, it's got to have sewer. If you don't have sewer, that's not possible. So it's layers and layers of bureaucracy that the legislature has to look at and say, you know, what do we need to do to address the needs of our community now and update the laws so it does that.
Okay, and I guess okay, Liz,
I
let me
just want-
let me just ask. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to point out that one of the senators, I can't remember who it was, but did introduce a bill that to allow for an additional extension or a little casita at the back. I have to look at where that bill went. But as Gina puts it, yes, if that does go forward, what needs to be factored in as well is the infrastructure. Is the infrastructure capable? So if you had one block of homes that did that, but the infrastructure and the water, you know, it's limited, then it will impact, it's a bigger picture. So there are different layers, as Gina puts it, that has to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if you pass this bill, but the infrastructure in that particular neighborhood is not, cannot accommodate 20, 30 homes in that particular block for the infrastructure, then yeah, it's going to get complicated.
Because Gina, I guess to contextualize what you were just saying, so as far as the scope of the law on Guam and our public policy, it's actually easier to build a home from scratch and acquire the land and set up all the infrastructural concerns and get everything all specced out and squared away and erected and turned on than it is to basically take an existing property on land and then just divide that, right? I mean, that's where we are right now.
Yeah, it's
wow.
But I don't think anything is easy here, Jason. There's no such thing as easy, but it's more manageable. To just, if you have a piece of property, you can go and if you have the means, you know, you either have the cash or the loan available, you can start from scratch and build. It's time consuming. I would say you probably need to plan for 6 months to a year for your permit alone. That's ridiculous. We all know it's ridiculous. We've been saying it's ridiculous and we still haven't fixed that. So maybe we need to start with that, but then go to the books and find out why is there so much add-ons in places like Kaiser and Li Guan and goodness gracious, I mean, there's add-ons in most of these established neighborhoods. Why is that? Well, maybe because there's a need. And number two, there's sewer there. So it's easier to add on to a home that already has sewer. So if you already know there's a need, then maybe the people of the legislature need to identify that need. And I say sooner rather than later, change the law so you can help the community. Because right now it's getting tough out there to find suitable, affordable rental units.
Can I do what I do, Liz? And I'm very, very adept at this and ask a completely idiotic question because apparently like that's my thing, right? Has it ever been a trend or even like proposed or brought up, right? Like on Guam, and you were saying like with an extension or an outside kitchen or a casita, you know, that you build, you know, laterally for an existing home structure. Have they ever tried to do like what they do in Manhattan and New York, where they say, you know, lacking lateral real estate and everything, you just keep building up, and rather than build out, people take their homes and they say, okay, I've got a 1-story home, I'm going to build a 2nd story, I'm going to build a 3rd story, and I'll just keep going up.
You know, it's interesting because Guam, we do have our minimum lot sizes, but just bear in mind right now, our construction costs are so high that they could do that. But you know, I just put in for a quote for construction. So I'm waiting to see what that quote would look like. If you built a home, like let's say 2 years ago or a year ago, those prices have skyrocketed. So I'm waiting right now just to see what that is. But I wanted to point out in the Philippines, their lot sizes are like 200 square meters, which is so small. And they do squeeze, and they have different guidelines, but they do squeeze up to accommodate for the limited lot size. But for Guam, there's so many rules, guidelines, policies, procedures that we have to follow that, yes, you could probably do that in certain areas. But again, the construction costs right now, I think when I built, it was like either 130 to 150 per square foot. Right now, I'm curious to see, it's probably 200 something per square foot to build a home. So as Gina puts it, we're looking at the common folks. If we're trying to build and our income is rather low, how can you afford, to do that? And the other thing we talked about last time is even the sewer connection. If you were to connect, the cost, which we discussed at the last show,
200K.
200. It's high, very high.
Gosh, well,
So-
let's go ahead and end this episode as we did seemingly on the last 2 or 3 episodes. It's all about time and cost, and this is obviously something that that our elected leaders would hopefully need to take a very, very serious look at and hopefully streamline. So, ladies, we appreciate it as always, and hopefully we're not done with this topic just yet.
Yeah,
We're not done.
House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.